Now, welcome to another lightning response video. This time we got a longer question, so let's get right into it. And it comes to us from the animation connoisseur who asked, "Hey Thor, I have a feeling that I'm probably going to upset quite a few people with this question, but it's one that I feel does indeed need to be asked. Why does it seem like a large portion of your online community is so negative, cynical, and critical towards Star Wars when you yourself are someone whose opinions on the franchise seem much more balanced and fair overall? At times, especially in the past, I've found it hard to enjoy watching your content through no fault of your own, but simply because of how negative those who comment on your videos can be. It seems like more often than not, whenever you try to present some nice piece of news about Star Wars and examine it from all sides fairly, whether it be about a new show or book coming out, the status of Kathleen Kennedy's employment at Lucasfilm, or some other Star Wars related topic entirely, many of your viewers are quick to shut down any hope of something great being on the horizon, or for us to see positive changes with their own cynicism. For the record, I do believe that asking questions and not being willing to accept everything is a mature thing to do, but not being willing to ever think positively or accept anything is a very bad mindset in my eyes. Now, I have come to learn to take a lot of that in stride and just let what you have to say in your own video speak for itself without letting the words of a few others ruin it. But I'll admit, as a result of those fans' behavior, it hasn't always been easy for me to share my opinions regarding the franchise on your channel. In fact, there's even a couple of your viewers who I've frankly felt outright disrespected by, but even though a part of me wants to, I'm not going to name names so that no one comes after me. With the way that they've responded to certain comments of mine being disrespectful to many of my own personal views, and in essence making me out to either be delusional or a fool or just plain dumb for thinking differently than them. And I know you're no stranger to this kind of negativity either. In past videos you've talked about in the past, you yourself have received quite a few fairly harsh comments in the 9+ years you've operated as a content creator, with some even bordering on, if not crossing the line, over into genuine hate and harassment. So my question to you about this is, how do you cope with that kind of negativity, and does it all impede your desire and motivation to make content relating to the franchise? Does it discourage you from wanting to make your voice heard, or rather bolster your confidence to assert your opinions and beliefs on the franchise? Okay, so before getting to your question here, I hope you all humor me because I'm going to give a bit of a story, a bit of an analogy, which I sometimes like to do here. Oftentimes I'll give you a restaurant analogy, but this time it's going to be a sports analogy because I think sports, being a fan of a sports team, can also be very similar to being a fan of something like Star Wars. Not exactly, but perhaps after I tell my little story here, you'll see the comparisons. Anyway, I have been a fan of the Milwaukee Brewers, the baseball team, if you don't know, for like 40 years. Since I was very young, my dad introduced me to baseball. It's one of the few things, sports is pretty much the only thing me and him kind of have in common, that we share in common. So I have been a fan of that in many ways, just to have something to be close to him, if that makes sense. So recently, this season, the Brewers, they made it to the National League Championship Series, one series away from the World Series and winning it all, obviously. And they played the Dodgers, and to put it bluntly, they got embarrassed, and it was just the worst thing baseball-wise I have ever seen. They played terribly. The Dodgers, to their credit, are a better team, a team that spends a lot more money than the Brewers do, which is also very frustrating. Anyway, they got embarrassed by the Dodgers, and the only way I can put it, if you're just a Star Wars fan who doesn't care about sports, is it was kind of the baseball version of The Last Jedi, or the equivalent of The Last Jedi for a Brewers fan, where it was something you were so excited for, so hopeful for, that you just thought this was the year, this was going to be the coolest thing ever, they're going to win it all, and then it was the opposite. They were terrible. And it was, again, it was embarrassing for the Brewers, and it was just agonizing as a fan of the team to watch those 4 games and to just know this is not going to end the way you hoped for. And so after that, I was just very disappointed, if not, let's call it angry. I just was like, you know what? I'm never watching baseball ever again. I don't want to watch this team continue to lose. I know there's no chance they're ever going to win, so why do I put myself through this? And my dad, who has been, of course, watching baseball longer than me, he actually got to see a Milwaukee team win the World Series in 1957. He's seen the Braves win almost 70 years ago, and he's been watching every season since, and watching them lose every season since, other than when there was no team in Milwaukee for a span there. Anyway, that's not the point. My point is, he basically said to me, you know what? That was a really great season. That was the best season in Brewers history. They beat the Cubs, they beat their rival in the playoffs. That was awesome to see, that was exciting, and maybe next year. And there was a part of me that got, like, angry at him for having any sort of hope whatsoever. Like, how can you watch this team or watch baseball for all these years and have hope that you're ever gonna see them win again? And so I kind of got mad at him for that response. And not really like mad, but you know what I mean? You're just like, how could you say that? How could you have hope anymore? And the funny thing is, even though I have sworn off baseball for the rest of my life, I still would consider myself a Brewers fan. I still like the Brewers. I still love the Brewers. I still want to see them win. I just don't know that I can, especially right now after watching the Dodgers win the whole thing. They won the World Series. I'm just like, I just don't know that I can right now think about baseball. But maybe next April, I will once again be sitting in the stands watching a game and paying way too much money for food and drink. Anyway, my point after all of that, and you can probably see it, but I understand the people in my comments section who are very, very negative and just have nothing but terrible things to say about Star Wars, and they seem to have no hope whatsoever that it'll ever get better. And I'm not excusing them for attacking you, don't get me wrong. There have been plenty of people, I've talked about it, you mentioned it, who have said some pretty nasty things to me over the years, including up to telling me to kill myself, or I hope I die, or I hope I get cancer, or I hope bad things happen to my wife, which is the ones that really bug me the most. But I've had people say really, really horrible things to me. It's not a lot of people, don't get me wrong, it doesn't happen all the time, but it has happened, and yeah, it's not acceptable. It's so irrational that part of you just wants to say, just ignore them. They're just trying to troll you on the internet, and you're letting them get to you. But anyway, again, I'm not trying to defend the people who go too far with their anger and their frustrations and take it out on others, but I do understand it. I do think that deep down, a lot of the people who watch my videos and are just very negative and say, oh, I hate Disney Star Wars. I hope it burns. I can't care about Star Wars anymore. I have nothing but apathy. I do think and want to hope and believe, as a fan of Star Wars who does want to see it get better, I do hope and believe that down deep, the reason why they do still watch my videos is because they do want it to get better. They do want to see good Star Wars again in their lifetime, the same way I want to see the Brewers win the World Series in my lifetime. That would be kind of cool. It'd be nice, even though right now I have certainly given up hope of that ever happening. And again, much like with sports and sometimes how you have a terrible owner, but you can still love your team, you can still root for your team independent of that terrible owner. Like I've said before, that's kind of how I feel about Star Wars. I don't like Disney. I wish they didn't own it. I wish George Lucas had never sold and had found or figured out something else to do with it. But he didn't, and there's a high probability, a very high probability, that Disney will never ever sell it, that they will continue to hold that IP for the rest of my life. And so my only hope is for them to get it right or to stop being a Star Wars fan, which, yes, that is an option. I can just say, screw it, I'm not going to watch Star Wars anymore. Or I can say I don't have to watch the Disney stuff. I can go back, I can read all the EU books again, which I have started to do. I can watch the original movies. I can do all of that. I can just talk to my fellow fans who love the old stuff, and that's what I can focus on as well. I can basically remember the good times. But if I want there to be a future for the franchise, I do kind of have to root for Star Wars, even if, again, I don't necessarily root for Disney. As I've also said before, I want to see it endure. I want to see future generations enjoying Star Wars and being able to carry it on into the far, far future long after I'm gone. That's what I basically hope for the franchise long term. And so to get to and answer your questions actually here, how do I, first of all, cope with all the negativity? Again, I don't necessarily see it as negativity or hatred for the sake of hatred. I see it as people who used to love something are very, very disappointed, if not angry, if not bordering on apathy. As for does it all impede your desire and motivation to make content related to the franchise? Again, not really. I think the most disappointing part of doing this sometimes is that, yes, the negative videos tend to just get more views and attention and comments than the positive ones do. I'm not saying I'm upset at people or blame people or anything like that for not clicking on my more positive content, though I do find it frustrating when someone will say, oh, you only do negative videos, Thor, you're such a hater. And I'm like, well, I made like 7 positive videos in a row that you probably didn't click on, but you clicked on this one. Anyway, it is frustrating. It does sometimes hamper your motivation to a degree because I don't want to make negative videos. Yes, they make me more money, but as I've said before, I'd rather make less money and have really great Star Wars than have terrible Star Wars and make a ton of money. I've also pointed out that the best month I ever had on YouTube was actually when Star Wars was doing really well, and that was during season 2 of The Mandalorian. That was the best in terms of views and just revenue and all of it. It was crazy. It was astronomical compared to every other month I've ever had on YouTube. And that was when Star Wars was arguably at its best or most exciting in some ways. When Luke Skywalker came back, when everybody was just loving season 2 of The Mandalorian. So Star Wars being really, really good can be a really good thing for me in terms of, again, how my YouTube channel does. But anyway, to stop myself from rambling, I feel like I've been all over the place in this video, but hopefully I made some kind of point. But basically, I just want Star Wars to be good. I would love to just make positive videos about Star Wars and for everybody in the comments to be happy because it's so good and there's really nothing bad to point out. But I would argue and have in many videos that that is not the reality of Star Wars today, that it is not handled the best, that it has been on a downward trend for the last decade since Disney took over, and that many fans have either fled the franchise altogether or are very upset and are sticking around and still commenting on videos and just more and more angry all the time and more disappointed until the point where they do reach true apathy and will no longer click on anybody's videos and just completely leave the franchise and not talk about it anymore. And so while they're still here, while they're still willing to listen, hopefully they do listen to some of my more positive takes and take them to heart and still have a shred of hope down deep somewhere. And if they don't, I completely understand that too. I can get that. I relate to that. They have given up all and any hope that Star Wars will ever win the World Series. And on that note, I think it's going to be all I got for you this time. So it is now your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any and all of this, and hopefully do it in a civilized manner. Let's try and always remember we're on the same team here. We all love Star Wars. We just don't always agree. We love different aspects, and it's never going to be a perfect fandom, but we can try to be civilized towards each other. Whatever the case may be, though, leave your comments below or ask a question for a future lightning response video. And let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.